Hey Felters! In this video, I'll teach you how to make Babu the Time Machine Wizard-Gnome. Babu stands about 7 inches tall and is an intermediate level project. If you've done some felting and you're ready to level up your skills, then this is the project for you. My work surface is a magic foam pad that's especially for needle felting, and I'm felting with carded wool fiber from Harrisville Designs. I'm using some locks and also a wooden skewer. For the felting needles, I have 2 needles I'm working with. The finishing needle is silver and it's a little shorter. This is good for smoothing out the felt. My shaping needle is more coarse and it's for shaping the wool. It has purple on top of it. I'll indicate which needles I'm using with these symbols. Whichever needle I'm working with, I like to put it inside this grip of dreams. This just makes it more comfortable to hold. If you don't have a grip, you can hold the bare needle. All the supplies I'm using are linked to in the video description. Before felting, I need to measure and mark my skewer. So I'm using a ruler and measuring 4 inches from the pointy end of the skewer and marking it with a permanent marker. If you don't have a ruler, keep in mind that a credit card is 3 1/4 inches, so you could do it just a little bit longer than a credit card. I'm going to start with my gnome's body. So the first thing I do is peel the blue fiber into thinner strips. This just makes it easier to work with. Then I'll take one of the strips and start at the pokey end of the skewer and fold it over. I start wrapping the fiber around the skewer as tightly as I can. The shape I'm going for is kind of a cylinder. I'm keeping an eye on the mark that I made on the skewer and making sure not to wrap my fiber too far past it. Wrapping the fiber within the mark will make sure that my wizard turns out the right height in the end. I'm starting with my purple shaping needle. To felt the body, I stab the felting needle into the wool. Every time I stab, I can see a little dent in the fiber where the felting needle went in. That shows me that the felting needle is grabbing the fibers and matting them together. You'll notice that I'm rotating the piece as I'm felting it and working it from all directions. As I'm felting, I'm keeping an eye on my Sharpie mark and making sure that the fibers don't stretch beyond it. I'm felting it from both ends, so it should start getting shorter. That's a good thing. One of the things I love about felting is how forgiving the material is. So for my gnome, I'm liking the shape, but I feel like it's going to need more of a round belly. So I'm pulling off some pieces of blue fiber and I'm laying it onto my body and I'll just start felting it on. When it's done, you'll never know that I added this piece later. If you have parts of your gnome body that need more volume, go ahead and just add more fiber and felt it right on there. My body's really starting to hold together, but the surface of it is still kind of lumpy bumpy. So I'm going to use my silver finishing needle, and I'll put mine inside my grip of dreams. If you don't have a grip, that's fine. You can just hold onto the bare needle and keep felting. The technique now is to use shallow little pokes all over the surface of the felt. The shallow pokes and the fine needle will smooth out the texture and tighten up the felt. As I'm finishing up, the final shape that I'm going for is kind of an egg shape with a flat bottom. Test out your body and see if it will stand up easily on a table. If it doesn't, felt the bottom some more. Now I'm making the head of my gnome. The head and the hat are made in one piece. I'm taking my tan fiber and stripping it down into thin strips. I'll wrap it around the skewer again, starting at the pointy end and going down until the 4-inch mark. The shape I'm going for here is a cone, where the fat end of the cone is at the mark on the skewer, and the pointed or tapered end of the cone is at the pokey end of the skewer. So you can see that I'm layering up extra wool at the base to achieve that shape. I'm keeping an eye on the 4-inch mark on my skewer. Sometimes the fiber slips out a little bit, and that's okay. I just want to make sure that my finished cone shape isn't getting longer than 4 inches. My shape is starting to come into focus here. You can see I want a rounded bottom and a pointy top. I'm using my finishing needle with shallow pokes all over the head for another few minutes. Now I'll make a purple hat by felting purple fleece right on top of the cone I just felted. I pull off a little piece of fiber and then hold it tightly against the cone. I typically use the finishing needle here because it attaches the fiber nicely without making big dents in the cone shape that I just felted. You could try both needles though and see what works for you. You can see that I'm just wrapping the fiber around the cone and felting it on as I go. The face shape of your gnome is determined by how much hat there is. I'm going to go for a face that's about an inch tall, so I'm adding another little piece of purple fiber so that the bulb below it, where the face will be, is an inch in height. It's pretty typical to have a pesky little bald spot at the tip of your wizard's hat. I use a little bit of purple fleece to cover up the spot, and I felt it straight on. I don't want to over felt it by stabbing straight into the tip of the hat, or the hat won't be pointy. So once I've got that purple attached, then I lay the hat down onto the blue foam and felt with the felting needle at an angle. I'm holding the felting needle at a 45-degree angle and stabbing down towards the face from the tip. Here's where the personality of your gnome will start to really shine. I'm going to start the face by making the nose. I pull off a little piece of tan fiber and roll it into a little log. I'm going to sculpt my nose a little bit before attaching it to the face. So I've got it rested on the blue foam and I start stabbing it with the felting needle. I like to use the fine needle here because this piece is so small. Notice that I left the bridge of my nose area kind of fluffy. I start by attaching that fluff right under the cuff of the hat. If yours isn't very fluffy, tug on it so you can loosen the fibers and that they'll attach smoothly there. Felting the face is all about using the felting needle strategically. The needle does two things. It can attach parts together, and it can also compress and tighten areas. So I want to be careful not to compress my nose too much. I want it to stick out. So when I'm felting it on, most of the pokes that I do are on either the left or the right side of the nose or from underneath. I'm trying to refrain from stabbing too much straight down over the whole nose because I know that will flatten it out. You can see here I'm working the perimeter of the nose, grabbing on to the back of the nose fibers and burying them inside of the head for a good connection. Now I'm adding the cheeks. I pull off a little bit of the tan fiber and roll it up in my fingertips. I wad it up into a ball and just rest it down on the face and start to felt it on. Because the cheeks don't have to be very precise, I usually don't felt them on the blue foam separately first, but you can if you want to. Just like with the nose, I'm trying to be strategic about where I stab when I'm attaching the cheek. I want it to stay puffy and round, so for the most part, I use the needle around the outside edge of the cheek, like the perimeter of the circle, if you can imagine that. That way the cheek stays puffy and sticks out from the face. The cheeks are fluffier and a lot less dense than the head, and that's okay. Now here's where I use the felting needle to start to compress the fibers. I'm going to felt right above where the cheeks are, where the eye sockets would be. And I'm not adding any fiber, I'm just using the felting needle to dent down that space to add contours to the face. So just stab, stab, stab above the cheek until you're happy with the shape. I'm using white carded fleece for my eyebrows. I pull off a little strip and start to roll it in my fingertips. This one's turning out really long, so I'm going to fold it in half and continue to roll it. I want to leave it a little fluffy and loose, so it's kind of wild. I'm attaching it with just a couple stabs near the bridge of the nose. I want my brows to stay really bushy, so I don't want to over felt them. For the mustache, I like to pull off a little piece of fiber and then fold it in half. I twist the ends a little bit so it has kind of a pointy end. Then I attach the rounded end, the folded side, right underneath the nose. To make the rosy cheeks, I'll use just a little dusting of chalk pastel. This is just an average pastel that I bought from the art supply store. If you don't have pastel around the house, you could also use a little bit of eyeshadow or blush rubbed onto your finger. I love working with curly locks so much. They give the gnomes so much personality. To work with them, I open up the pile of locks and then try and snip apart the little strands. The danger when you're working with locks is to handle them too much so they get really fuzzed out. So I'm just trying to gently pull them apart and then use scissors to snip the ends. Attaching the locks is super easy. If you have a clump like this, you can just take the whole clump and felt it right on to Babu's head. I'm positioning the locks so they start right at the bottom of the hat. I want it to look like the locks are just bursting out from under the wizard hat. When your locks are naturally longer than they need to be, you can fold it in half like this one, and then just felt the fold right at the base of the hat. Now I'll make some arms for my little guy. I'll take some purple fiber and pull off some short pieces. I'm laying them down on the blue foam pad with the grain of the fiber going vertically. Once it's about 4 inches wide, I'll lay down another layer on top with the grain of the fiber going horizontally. My goal here is to have even coverage and to also not use too much fiber. The felting begins. Ultimately, I'm going to roll this pile up into a little log, but first I think it helps to felt it just a little bit with the felting needle into the foam. I peel my fiber up from the foam base, and then I want to start felting it into a little log. I like to do that by folding up the bottom and felting it down. My arm piece is technically felted, but it's still really wimpy. So if I tried to attach it to my gnome right now, it would just hang there kind of limp. I want to stiffen it up, so I'm switching to my finishing needle, and as I'm stabbing the felting needle into the arm, I'm angling the needle so that the tip of it ends up inside of the felt. For me, that means holding my needle at a 45-degree angle. You'll notice as I'm stabbing, I'm pointing the needle towards the center of the log, not out toward the end. This will tighten up the fibers and make the felt more dense. For my hands, I'll just wrap a tiny bit of tan-colored fiber around each end of this log. If you haven't figured it out yet, this log that I felted is a dual arm that I'll cut in half and use for both. The main thing to keep in mind here is to just wrap the fiber as tightly as you can before you start felting it. To attach the arms, I hold the cut side of the arm tightly against the gnome's body. I like to use the shaping needle here. It seems to grab more fibers and help it stick on a little bit easier. I'm going all the way around the shoulder, and I'll even go under the armpit using the felting needle to stab through the purple and into the navy. If the arm doesn't seem to want to attach, use a little wisp of navy fiber and felt it right into the joint. So much of what makes Babu magical is his hat. To decorate, the first thing I do is felt on the yellow spiral. I pull off a little bit of yellow fleece and try to get it off the wad in a thin strip. Then I kind of tease out the wool and roll it in my fingertips. I'm also twisting the fibers a little bit so the resulting strand feels a lot like yarn. There's no formula for felting the spiral on. It's good though to start it from the middle of the spiral and to anchor the fiber really well. I usually start it about 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom of the hat and have it spiral out from there. It's star time! If you have one of my kits, you have some blue and gray stars. These are die cut out of wool felt. To attach the stars, you have two options. The trickier option is to needle felt them on. You just hold them onto your hat and then gently felt it. Definitely use your finishing needle here. The shaping needle will poke a big hole in it. Your other option is, of course, glue. I'm using a Fabric Fusion glue pen. I like to use these because the tip is really fine, so it helps me not make a mess of the glue. But you could also use hot glue, Elmer's glue, or any kind of crafty glue. I want you to prepare yourself now for what I believe is the secret to gnome cuteness. And that's a move I like to call the squish. I know, you're shocked. It seems like gnome abuse, but it's not, I swear. It can be scary to squish the sculpture you've been working on for hours, but I really think it's effective in unifying all the features on the face. You could try it gently and see if it works for you. Here's my finished Babu the Time Machine Wizard. He looks like he's about to head back into time right now. I had so much fun with this felting project, and I would love to see pictures of what you've been making. Please tag me on Instagram so I can see all of your wizards. All the materials I used in this video are linked in the description. Happy felting!